can develop a very firm working relationship with the government or various government agencies and organizations. These will be advantageous to the business organization. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So this one, he gave a scenario. So from an anonymous attendee, I came from a small scale enterprise, but data security is of utmost concern to us. But due to the pandemic, our resources became limited, both digitally and physically. So how can we address the data security at limited resources? Maybe you can help him out here.
Well, for just a short thought, because I can answer very limitedly for the Philippines, because we are now covered with the Data Privacy Act law. So we have to work within that premise. And for your accessibility and all of the things that you could apply, you could work within that parameter, and all of your innovations can work within that parameter. Because at the end of the day, we cannot violate those. So that's for the Philippines. Sir Stanley.
No, I think that's not just for the Philippines, but I think globally it can be applied. And that was a perfect answer because you have to work within the framework of the regulatory requirements, the compliance part. If you fail to do that, two things happen. One, of course, your organization will be vulnerable and they may lose data or their data may be compromised. The second thing is they may get a slap on the wrist by the government, could be a fine. And then, as earlier Sir Michael mentioned, reputational damage. Reputational damage will also occur, right? The press, your customers will all come to hear of the issue. So I think the best guideline, if the company has no financial resources, nor does it want to spend money, then the best solution is stay within the regulatory framework. Anything less than that, you need to advise the management, you need to tell them you are not staying within the framework. And by doing so, you are potentially violating the law of the land. I think that's the best approach.
Okay. All right. So moving forward to our next question. Okay. From this one is from Sir Jerry Catalan. So his question is, what are the things to be considered to create emergency preparedness plan?
Sir Stanley.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Well, either you attend my my diploma program or my certified certification program, and one of it is on DCM. But but okay, the short answer to this is there are four elements that you should consider. One is before you do anything else, you need to do a business impact analysis or BIA. When you do a business impact analysis, what you are essentially doing is looking at all the different risk factors that will impact your organization's business in terms of disruption, damage, loss of life, loss of business, and so on and so forth. So you would need to do a business impact analysis to identify what are the risk factors that would impact the business. Once you have done that, then for each of those risk factors, you have to develop a crisis management plan. This crisis management plan, or some use the word emergency preparedness plan, different terminology, it's the same thing. You would prepare an emergency management plan or a crisis management plan for each of those risks that have been identified in your BIA, whether it's smoke, fire, explosion, flooding, inclement weather, typhoon, whatever that impact is, you must have a crisis management plan. And then the next portion is your business continuity plan. Why? Because when your crisis management plan kicks in, what it is essentially doing is to try and stabilize the crisis. to a point where the crisis is no longer hindering your business. But for some reason, the crisis drags on or it escalates, then your organization's business continuity plan needs to kick in to allow the organization to function as optimum as possible over a defined period of time before it will say, well, we have to close shop or we have to move somewhere. So the BCP kicks in. And then when everything is over, the smoke is all gone, your disaster recovery plan kicks in to get the organization back on its feet again. So remember, BIA, very important. Crisis management plan, very important. Business continuity plan, and then disaster recovery plan. Each has a life of its own. That's all I can really share.
That's the short version, Sir Stanley.
Oh, yes. Super short.
All right.
You should
So,
attend our class and then we will be able to give them the long version. 5-day version, 3-day version, depends.
right. So maybe we will just take two more questions from the audience. So the last two would be how to shift from traditional safety and security controls to digitalized modalities in port safety and security management.
Sir Stanley?
Sure. I'll start first and foremost. I think the most important step when you want to do this transformation from a traditional security environment to a digitalized security environment, you need to consider 4 factors. Although it is not limited to 4, but at a minimum, you need to look at 4 important factors. Number 1, is the organization prepared to fund the infrastructure, to provide budget, to provide resources, to provide training, and so on and so forth? I think that's one of the key considerations. Second is the kind of business and the kind of industry that the organization is in. Are you in manufacturing? Are you providing a service? Are you doing a call center operation? Or are you doing a e-platform operation or e-commerce operation? Are you doing back-end technology developing? All these factors are important before you decide. Why? Because they will tell you what type of risk exposures will impact your particular industry. So for example, if I am in, let's say I am in a payment industry, e-payment platform, where I develop technology and software to ensure that all my users have a seamless experience when they use my payment platform or my payment gateway, right? So I will look at what are the exposures. So I will need to know the kind of information that is being used by the employees. I need to understand which set of employees have access to what level of information, how those information needs to be protected, and what is the impact in terms of financial damage, reputational damage, and lost opportunity damage may occur if I don't do things correctly. Once I understand that, then I can decide the kind of technology, right, that needs to be put in place. The next area I will look at is the skill set. I will need to ensure that I had the right people with the right skill set to be able to be involved in this transformation from traditional to a digitalized platform. And then the last point is you cannot leave traditional security behind and then just transform into a digitalized platform. You need to have and interactive relationship. Traditional security will always be around. You will still need security men guarding operations. The question is what shape and form and what size and what would be their role involved. So that will always remain. You will still need the human investigative function. You will still need the human assessments that are being done. You will still, to some degree, need the human interactive involvement in monitoring all this technology in your control center and so on and so forth. So that traditional part doesn't totally go away, but it may be reduced and upscale. I always like to use the word upscale. So the traditional security environment is now upscaled into a digitalized environment where security personnel now will make use of more technology to perform their risk management responsibilities. So that's how I would view it.
Okay. Okay, I will just take this last question since we're running out of time. So, this is just a question, short question. How does one determine future threats effectively?
Can you repeat that?
Um, how does how does one determine future threats effectively?
Follow all my slides. As I said, you need to see what the threats are, and I've just given you a crystal ball view of 2021. And so if you look at all those information that I shared, you should have a general idea of what to expect in terms of risks and threats in 2021. And so now you can adjust all your security management plans, your risk management plans, and adjust your security posture in the correct manner for each of your organization's footprint across the globe to be able to deal with these threats. So that's my advice.
Okay. So, anything to add, Sir Michael, before we end this session?
Actually, all the answer are with the presentation of Sir Stanley. So majority, even to the questions that were not inserted here or not answered live, I think just read back, reassess, and if you were able to get some notes, um, Sir Stanley was really able to place all of the foundations, all of the technical requirements that was needed to be able to ensure, like just like the last question, how do you prepare for that one? I think all of those answers are right there and perfectly said, especially in the transition of this pandemic and in answering most of this, risk management is really the tool that is needed and the right application of the things that it needs. You don't just stay inside the box. Make sure that you go outside and it's a very fresh this is a good time for security and safety, I think. I'm sorry, but not to be, sometimes the bad situations are good for security and safety because it's a good time, it's a good opportunity to learn, to understand the cost and how we could be able to mitigate everything because these are opportunities when it happens, where did we make the mistake? So you could now be able, just like what Sir Stanley said, step back. There's nothing wrong with stepping back. All we have to do is know how to step back and humble ourselves and understanding and do the research, do the things, do the legwork. Because at the end of the day, if we do not do the legwork, we're still going to be left hanging by all of those situations that are unanswered. And the answers are right there. Thank you, Sir Stanley. I learned from your lecture. There's so many things that we did not really discuss. And I think I would have to enroll on your school so I could be able to adapt. And these